My husband threw me out on the street like trash after 15 years together. No money, no home, nothing. When I used the old card my father had left me, the bank manager turned pale and said, "Ma'am, quick, you need to see this. What I discovered that day changed everything, and my ex-husband still does not know what is coming for him. But before we continue, check if you are already subscribed to the channel Elderly Stories and write in the comments where you are watching this video from. We love to know how far our stories reach. The rain was falling hard when I left the building for the last time. I did not bring an umbrella because I never imagined he would do something like this. 15 years of marriage. 15 years building a life next to Richard, and it all ended with him pointing at the door and telling me I had half an hour to leave. Half an hour. I could not even process it properly. I had just returned from Ohio, where I spent 3 weeks taking care of my mother who had suffered a stroke. I was exhausted, wanting to go back home, dreaming of sleeping in my own bed. When I put the key in the lock and it did not work, I thought it had become demagnetized. I rang the doorbell. Richard opened the door with a cold expression I had never seen before. He was wearing that designer shirt I had given him for his birthday, but there was a lipstick stain on the collar. Wine red lipstick. "Not my shade. You are back already?" That was all he said. I felt my stomach knot. Something was wrong. Very wrong. "Why is the key not working?" I asked, still not understanding. "Because I changed the locks." He said it so naturally that I thought I had heard wrong. But then a feminine laugh echoed from inside, coming from our bedroom. A young voice, lively without the slightest shame. "Rick, who is it? If it is the doorman, tell him to get lost." She appeared at the door wearing my silk robe, the robe I bought in Paris, that very expensive robe that Richard complained I had spent too much on. And now it was on the body of a girl who could not be more than 25 years old. I recognized her face, a digital influencer, one of those who post photos on yachts and in fancy restaurants. Vanessa Algo. She had almost 200,000 followers on Instagram. She looked me up and down, my wrinkled jeans from the trip, my simple blouse, my hair tied up in a messy way, and she gave a sideways smile, a poisonous smile. "Oh, it is just his ex-wife," she said, turning to Richard. I thought it was something important. Ex-wife. The word cut like glass. "Richard, what is going on?" My voice came out trembling. "Who is this girl? Why is she in our house using my things?" He sighed as if I were being inconvenient, as if I were a problem he needed to solve quickly to get back to doing something more interesting. "It is over, Sarah. There is no us anymore." Just like that. Like 15 years summarized in 5 words. "What do you mean it is over?" "I was taking care of my mom. You said everything was fine, that I could stay as long as necessary, and I was being polite." He replied with that tone of superiority I had learned to hate in recent years. But the truth is that this has not been working for a long time. You stagnated, Sarah. You became a boring housewife. I need someone who keeps up with me, who understands my lifestyle. I looked at Vanessa, who was now checking her phone with disinterest, as if this conversation was too tedious to deserve her attention. "Since when?" I managed to ask. 8 months, he replied without hesitation. "Vanessa understands me in a way you never did. 8 months. While I woke up early to make his coffee the way he liked it, while I organized his company parties, while I pretended not to notice he was becoming more distant. He had already replaced our entire life with another woman. "Walk with me downstairs," Richard ordered. "Let us resolve this in a civilized way without scenes." He guided me to the elevator. We went down in silence. In the lobby of the building where we had lived for 10 years, in an exclusive upscale neighborhood, where I greeted the neighbors every morning, he took me to a discreet corner away from curious eyes. "I already filed for divorce 3 weeks ago," he said, taking an envelope from his pocket. "Everything is here, signed and registered. The apartment is in my name. The cars, too. I already emptied the joint accounts. My world spun. You cannot do that. I have rights." "Rights?" He laughed. "Sarah, you have not worked for 10 years. You lived off me all this time. If you want to fight in court, go ahead, but you will spend what you do not have on lawyers, and you will lose anyway. Accept it and move on." The doorman approached, bringing my suitcase. That old suitcase I had used on the trip to Ohio. Richard took it and placed it at my feet with indifference. "Your clothes are there. The rest I threw away. It was useless anyway." I looked at the suitcase. 15 years fit in a worn-out suitcase. "You cannot leave me with nothing," I whispered, feeling the tears starting to burn. "Richard, please. If you do not make a scene, maybe I will give you some financial help. $1,000 for you to go see your mother and stay there until you organize yourself. $1,000. As if that compensated for 15 years of my life. Some people in the lobby stopped to watch. Whispers, looks of pity. Richard noticed and got irritated. "Stop making a scene," he said, raising his voice. "Security." 2 security guards approached. I knew both of them, Ralph and Pete, who always greeted me with kindness. Now they were there to escort me out. "Excuse me." "Mrs. Sarah," said Ralph in a low voice, taking my suitcase. "We do not want to do this, but—" I understand I interrupted him, trying to maintain some dignity. I looked back one last time. Richard was already returning to the elevator, his cell phone to his ear, probably talking business with someone. As if I had never existed. The glass doors of the building closed behind me, isolating me from 15 years of my life. I stood there on the sidewalk in the rain that was now falling harder, with an old suitcase and an envelope full of papers that made my humiliation official. The world kept moving around me. Cars passing, people running to protect themselves from the rain, the city indifferent to my despair. I started walking, aimlessly dragging the suitcase through the wet streets. I could not go back to Ohio in that state. My mother was still recovering, too fragile to handle this news. I had no close friends. I lost contact with everyone when I got married, completely absorbed by Richard's world. Night fell quickly. The city lights turned on bright shop windows, full restaurants, couples laughing. I was invisible, a wet and lost shadow. I entered a cheap diner and ordered a coffee. I opened my wallet. I had $20. That was all I had left in the world. $20. It was not even enough for a night in a decent hotel. My cell phone was at 5% battery. I opened the banking app, trembling. The joint account Richard and I had was at 0. He had taken out every last cent, including the money I had before getting married, a small inheritance from my grandmother. Everything. He took everything. I felt like screaming, crying, breaking something. But I could only sit there staring at that screen with a 0 balance while reality fell on me like a crushing weight. I was alone. No money, no home, no one. It was then that I saw the card. It was hidden in the deepest compartment of the wallet behind an old photo of my father. The card was dark blue, somewhat faded at the edges, with the logo of a bank I did not even remember still existed. Regional Heritage Bank. I took the card with trembling fingers. The last time I had seen this was 15 years ago when my father gave it to me before I got married. I remembered the conversation as if it were yesterday. We were in his small office back in Ohio between piles of papers and the smell of old coffee. My father had a grocery store, nothing very big but enough to live well. "Sarah," he had told me with that serious tone he used when he wanted to say something important. "This is an account I opened for you a long time ago. Do not use it unless you really need it. It is not for normal expenses, do you understand?" "How much is in there, Dad?" I asked, curious. He just smiled, that mysterious smile that meant he knew more than he was saying. "Enough, but keep it as a last resort. While you are swimming well, you do not need this life jacket, but if the boat starts to sink—" He paused. "Hold on to it tight." I had kept the card and forgot about it completely. After all, Richard was successful. We had a comfortable life. I never imagined that one day I would need a life jacket. Now sitting in that cheap diner with $20 in my pocket and a destroyed life, my father's card was my only hope. Maybe there were a few $1,000s there, enough for a bus ticket to Ohio and a few months of rent for a simple room. It was not much, but it was a start. I paid for the coffee and left. The rain had stopped, but the air was cold and damp. I needed to find a branch of Regional Heritage Bank. I took my cell phone 3% battery now and searched. There was a branch 20 minutes from there. It opened at 9 in the morning. I looked at the watch. It was almost 11 at night. I would have to wait until the next day. I spent the night at a bus stop hugging my suitcase, trying not to sleep for fear of being robbed. The cold got into my bones. Some people passed and looked with pity or contempt. A lady stopped and offered me a sandwich. I accepted, swallowing my pride along with the food. When the first glow of dawn appeared, I got up and went to a public restroom. I washed my face. I tried to fix my hair. I adjusted my clothes. I wanted to look minimally presentable to enter the bank. At 9 o'clock sharp, I was in front of the branch. It was an old building but well preserved. Very little movement. I entered and took a number. I was called almost immediately. The teller was young. He could not be more than 25 years old. His badge said Jason. He smiled professionally. "Good morning. How can I help you?" I placed the faded card on the counter. I forgot the password. I wanted to know the balance. Jason took the card and his eyes widened a little. "Wow, this card is very old. A model from about 20 years ago. He typed some data into the computer. Can you show me your ID?" I handed over my ID with trembling hands. He typed a few more things. The screen took a while to process. Jason frowned. "How strange," he murmured. My heart raced. "What is wrong? Is it blocked? Is there any debt?" "No, it is not that." He looked at me, then at the screen, then at me again. "It is just that. This card is linked to a special account, a corporate account, and it has a security code I have never seen." Corporate? I did not understand anything. My father had a small grocery store, nothing like a big company. Just a moment. Jason stood up abruptly. "I need to call the manager. This is above my access level." He disappeared through a side door. I sat there feeling a mixture of fear and hope. Was there a problem? Had my father left debts? A few minutes later, a man of about 50 appeared. Gray hair, reading glasses hanging around his neck. Serious expression. His badge said, "Gerald Torres Manager." He looked at me in a different way. With respect. "Mrs. Sarah Silva?" he asked, verifying my identification. "Yes, please come with me to my office. We need to talk in private." My heart was beating so fast it felt like it would come out of my mouth. I took my suitcase and followed him to a small office with frosted glass walls. He closed the door and offered me water. "Mrs. Sarah." He began sitting behind the desk. "The account linked to this card is a very special account." "Special how?" He took a deep breath as if trying to find the right words. "Your father, Charles, opened a business structure 23 years ago, a family holding called C Holdings. He deposited and invested money religiously for years with a very specific clause. I was not understanding anything. What kind of clause?" Gerald turned the monitor toward me. The screen showed an account with numbers that made no sense to me. Many zeros. The clause stated that you would only have total access to this account when you met one of two conditions, either when your father passed away or when you found yourself in a situation of extreme financial need. My throat went dry. Extreme need. Your father was very specific. He programmed the system so that if you used this card after years of inactivity, and if your personal accounts were at zero, that would automatically trigger the transfer of control to you. I looked at the screen. Those numbers. They could not be real. How much? How much is in there? My voice came out almost in a whisper. Gerald adjusted his glasses. In total, considering investments, stocks, funds, and the money in the checking account, we are talking about approximately $4.5 million. The world stopped. $4.5 million. This cannot be true, I managed to say. My father had a small grocery store. He sold rice beans, basic products. Apparently, he also invested very well, said Gerald with a half smile. And for a long time. Compound interest works miracles when you have patience and discipline. He opened a drawer and took out a large envelope yellowed by time. Your father left you this with instructions that it only be delivered when the account was activated. I took the envelope with trembling hands. My name was written on the front with my father's firm handwriting. You can open it, said Gerald kindly. I will give you privacy. He left the office. I stayed there alone, holding that envelope as if it were going to explode. I tore the edge carefully and took out several sheets of paper. The first was a letter written by hand. My dear Sarah, if you are reading this, it means something went very wrong or I am no longer here. Either way, I want you to know that everything I did was thinking of your future. I grew up, poor daughter, very poor. I saw my mother suffer from not having money to eat. I saw good women be destroyed by bad men because they had no choice, because they depended on them for everything. When you were born, I swore that you would never go through that you would always have a choice. I worked hard all my life. The grocery store made a profit, but it was not just that. I invested every cent I had left over. I learned on my own reading books, studying the market. I made mistakes, but I learned from them. I created this holding in secret because I did not want any man to get close to you for money. I wanted you to choose for love, not for necessity. But I also wanted that if one day you needed it, you would have something to lean on. The extreme need clause was intentional. If you are reading this now, it is because you are going through something difficult, and I want you to know you are not alone. I took care of you even after I was gone. Use this money with wisdom, not for revenge, but to build your own life. A free life where you depend only on yourself. Be strong, my daughter. You are always stronger than you imagined. With all my love, Dad. Tears fell on the paper, staining some words. But they were not tears of sadness. They were of gratitude, of love, of understanding. My father had protected me even after death. I dried my eyes and took a deep breath. Gerald returned to the office bringing more papers. There are some decisions that must be taken, he said. The holding has shares in some companies' investment funds and a small rural property in Florida. Everything needs your signature now that you are the legal owner. I looked at those papers. Each one represented years of my father's silent work, years planning my future while I lived carefree. I need 3 things now, I said, surprised by the firmness of my own voice. Gerald picked up a pen. Tell me. First, I need cash. I literally have nothing. We can make an immediate withdrawal of up to $3,000. More than that needs prior notice. $2,000 is fine. Second, I need a safe place to stay, a discreet hotel where my ex-husband cannot find me if he looks for me. Gerald nodded. I know a hotel that accepts corporate reservations, discreet safe, no questions asked. And third, I paused. I need a lawyer. The best divorce lawyer you know, someone who is not afraid to fight with rich people. Gerald smiled for the first time, a true smile. I know the right person, Linda Nunes. She is relentless, specialized in asset division cases where one of the spouses tries to hide wealth. Perfect. I left the bank 3 hours later with a purse containing $2,000 in cash, 3 corporate credit cards, a stack of documents about my new assets, and Linda Nunes's number written on a paper. I was not the same woman who had entered. My first stop was at a clothing store. Nothing extravagant, but clean new clothes that made me feel human again. I bought 2 pairs of pants, 3 blouses, underwear, a light jacket, and a pair of comfortable shoes. I changed right there in the fitting room and threw the old clothes in the trash. Then I went directly to the hotel Gerald had indicated. It was discreet as promised. An old remodeled building. No flashy doorman, sober entrance. I checked in under the holding's name as a corporate entity. The room was small but clean. Hot shower, firm bed silence. I took the longest bath of my life, letting the hot water wash away all the dirt, the fear and the humiliation of the last 24 hours. When I got out of the bath, I looked at myself in the steamed mirror. My face was still tired, but my eyes had something different, a determination that was not there before. I called Linda's number. Nunez and Associates answered a female and professional voice. "I would like to speak with Linda Nunez. It is urgent. Ms. Nunez is in a meeting. Can I take your contact info? Please tell her it is Sarah Silva. Gerald Torres from Regional Heritage Bank recommended me. It is about a divorce case with concealment of assets." There was a pause. Just a moment. Less than a minute later, another voice answered deeper, firmer. "Sarah, this is Linda Nunez. Gerald called me earlier. I am aware of the situation. Can we meet today? Today?" I was surprised by the speed. "The sooner we start, the better. Your husband thinks you have no resources to fight, while he believes that we have the advantage. Can you come to my office in 2 hours?" "I can." "Excellent. Bring all the documents you have about the marriage, assets, joint accounts, everything." "And Sarah?" "Yes. You did the right thing looking for me. We are going to get back what is yours." I hung up the phone with my heart beating strong. For the first time in 2 days, I felt something that was not despair. It was anger. Anger for having been used, discarded, humiliated. And anger was a much better fuel than fear. I separated all the papers I had, the marriage certificate copies of old bank statements, the envelope Richard had given me with the divorce already resolved. I put everything in a folder and left for Linda Nunez's office. The office was in a commercial building downtown on the 9th floor. The waiting room was modern with gray walls and well-cared-for plants. The receptionist offered me coffee while I waited. It did not take 5 minutes. A woman of about 45 years, dark hair tied in a bun, thick-rimmed glasses, and an impeccable suit appeared at the door. "Sarah?" She extended her hand. "Linda Nunez, let us talk." We entered a spacious room with a large desk covered in law books and a computer. The walls were lined with diplomas and certificates. Linda was clearly someone who knew what she was doing. She sat down, took a pen and a notepad. "Tell me everything from the beginning." I told her. How I had met Richard in college, how he was charming and ambitious, how we got married shortly after I graduated, how he convinced me not to work, saying he wanted to support me, that I deserved a comfortable life. How over the years I lost my independence, my friends, my identity. I told her about my sick mother, about my trip to Ohio, about coming back and finding another woman in my house, about being kicked out with a suitcase and $20 in my pocket. Linda wrote everything down without interrupting. When I finished, she put the pen on the desk and looked me directly in the eyes. "Your ex-husband committed several serious mistakes." "Mistakes?" "First, he filed the divorce without your signature. That invalidates the whole process. Second, he emptied joint accounts without your knowledge or authorization. That is a crime. Third, there are assets acquired during the marriage that legally you have a right to half of." I felt a wave of hope. But he said everything is in his name. And it probably is. Men like your ex-husband are smart. They put everything in their own name. Sometimes they use shell companies' accounts under other names. But that does not matter. Linda smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a predator seeing prey. What matters is that he underestimated you, and that is going to cost him dearly. What are we going to do? Linda opened her laptop. "First, we are going to annul the fraudulent divorce he filed. That gives us a basis to present a real lawsuit where you will have a voice. Second, we are going to investigate all his wealth, companies' accounts, real estate investments, everything. I have contacts who do that kind of sweep. Will that not be expensive?" "It costs. But from what Gerald told me, you have resources now, and I can guarantee you it will be worth every penny." I signed the service contract right there. Linda explained that the process would be long. Maybe it would take months, but that we had real chances of getting a fair division. In the meantime, she said you need to keep your new wealth a complete secret. If your ex-husband discovers that you have resources, he will try to get to that money somehow. Men like that do not like to lose. He will not find out, I said firmly. My father made sure this was kept secret, and it will stay that way. Excellent. Oh, and Sarah? Yes, prepare yourself psychologically. When we file the court petitions, when Richard realizes you did not give up, he will try to intimidate you. He will send messages. Maybe try to find you. He will make threats. It is the pattern. I am prepared. But was I really? I spent the next few days in a strange routine. In the morning meetings with Linda and her team, they discovered Richard had 3 apartments besides the one where we lived, all rented out. They discovered accounts in 2 different banks' investments in startups, even a small stake in a famous restaurant, all hidden, all in his name or companies he controlled. He was preparing for this for years, said Linda, showing the documents systematically taking you out of the financial game. It is a classic case of economic abuse. Economic abuse. I had never heard that term, but it made sense. Richard had made me dependent on him on purpose, and now he thought he could get rid of me without consequences. In the afternoon, I met with Gerald at the bank to understand my own investments better. My father's holding had shares in solid companies, fixed income funds, even some cryptocurrency he had bought years ago that was now worth a fortune. Your father was a visionary, said Gerald with admiration. He understood the market better than many professionals. A week after being kicked out of the house, I was sitting in a cafe near the old building where I lived. I had not gone back there, but I needed to see it. I needed to confirm for myself that that was real, that it was not a nightmare. The cafe had a view of the building's entrance. I ordered a cappuccino and pretended to read a book while I watched. Richard came out around 10 in the morning, dressed to impress as always. Vanessa was by his side, holding onto his arm, laughing loudly at something. She wore a very expensive dress I recognized from a shop window I had seen last week. It cost almost $5,000. He was supporting her the same way he had supported me. The difference is that she was young, pretty visible a trophy for him to show off. I felt a pang of something that was not exactly jealousy. It was pity. Pity for her for not knowing that one day she would be discarded too. Pity for him for being so empty he needed external validation all the time. My cell phone rang. It was Linda. Sarah, we have news. I got a court order to block Richard's accounts temporarily. The judge accepted our arguments about the illegal emptying of the joint accounts. Blocked his accounts? All the ones we could identify so far. He cannot move anything until the case is judged. And there is more. We filed the request for annulment of the fraudulent divorce. He will receive the notification today. I looked through the cafe window. Richard and Vanessa were getting into an imported car, laughing, having no idea what was about to happen. Perfect, I said. Thank you, Linda. It is just the beginning. Now comes the interesting part. I hung up and stood watching his car disappear around the corner. The game had started, and this time I had aces up my sleeve he did not even dream existed. The legal notification reached Richard on a Tuesday morning. I know because Linda called me as soon as the process server confirmed delivery. He received it personally, she said, with satisfaction in her voice. And according to reports, he did not react well. What do you mean he did not react well? Let us just say he got altered. He tried to convince the officer that everything was resolved, that the divorce was already finalized. When he realized it would not work, he started screaming. I imagined the scene. Richard losing control, that mask of superiority cracking. I felt a small but real satisfaction. And now? Now he has 20 days to respond. He will probably hire an expensive lawyer and try to negotiate. But Sarah, you must be prepared. He will try to contact you. She was right. 3 hours later, my cell phone started ringing. Richard. I declined. It rang again. I declined. Messages started appearing on WhatsApp. Sarah, we need to talk. This is a misunderstanding. Call me. You are being manipulated by those lawyers. They just want your money. How funny. He thought I had hired lawyers with what money exactly? He still thought I was in misery, desperate. I did not answer any messages. Linda had instructed me not to maintain direct contact. Everything had to go through the lawyers. The messages became more aggressive. You are going to regret this. You are going to lose, and on top of that, you will end up owing money. I gave you a good life for 15 years. You owe me this." I blocked the number, but he did not give up. He created another number and kept trying. "Vanessa is asking me if you are okay. She's worried about you." This made me laugh out loud alone in the hotel room. Vanessa worried about me? Sure. I blocked the second number too. That night, I received a call from an unknown number. I answered by mistake, thinking it was from Linda's office. Sarah. It was his voice. Calmer, now controlled. That tone he used when he wanted to convince me of something. "How did you get this number? I have my contacts. We need to talk. Personally, we have nothing to talk about. Talk to my lawyer. Sarah, do not be ridiculous. Those lawyers are using you. You do not have money to afford a court fight with me. You are going to end up on the street for real." I took a deep breath. I could not let him get under my skin. I am already well advised. Thanks for the concern. Advised with what money? He laughed. "Do you think I do not know you were sleeping on the street?" Ralph told me. Ralph the guard. Of course, Richard had eyes everywhere. "If you call me again, I am going to file a complaint for harassment." I hung up before he could answer. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from anger. He still believed he had power over me, that he could intimidate me. I called Linda and told her about the calls. "Perfect," she said. "Keep all those messages, screenshots of everything. This demonstrates harassment and attempted coercion. It helps our case. Can he find out about my money? Not through legal channels. Your holding is under bank secrecy, registered only in your name. Unless you tell someone, there is no way for him to know." But the paranoia started to grow. What if he hired a private investigator? What if somehow he found out? Gerald reassured me when I called the next day. "Your financial structure is protected. Your father made sure of that. The holding does not appear in public searches. The investments are in separate corporate accounts. Even an investigator would have trouble tracing it." Still, I decided to be more careful. I changed hotels to one even more discreet. I started varying my schedules and routes. Maybe it was exaggerated, but I did not want to risk it. 2 weeks after the notification, Linda summoned me for an urgent meeting. Richard hired a big firm, Marquez and Silvera lawyers. They are expensive and aggressive. Is that bad? Not necessarily. Big firms are sometimes more worried about reputation and prefer settlements. But it also means he is taking it seriously. She put some papers on the desk. They sent a settlement proposal. Look at the documents. Richard offered $50,000 as a final settlement. No division of assets, no rights to the properties or companies, just $50,000 in cash paid in 24 monthly installments. "It is an insult," said Linda. "You have a legal right to much more than that. The assets acquired during the marriage are worth at least $8 million. Half of that is yours. So we reject it." Exactly. And we are going to counterattack. We already finished the complete sweep of his wealth. We found more interesting things. She opened her laptop and showed me a detailed spreadsheet. Besides the properties and accounts we already knew about, they had discovered Richard had shares in a construction company participation, in 2 real estate developments, and even a ranch that was under the company's name. Was all this acquired during the marriage? I asked. No. Part was before, but it grew a lot during. And by law, the wealth growth during the marriage is divided. She showed me complex calculations, projections, comparisons. My head was spinning with so many numbers. "How much do you think we can get?" Linda smiled. "If we win everything we are asking for, between $3 and $5 million plus alimony for the years you dedicated to the marriage and gave up your career. $3 to $5 million. Added to what I already had from my father, it would be more than $8 million. It was not about the money, I repeated to myself. It was about justice. It was about not letting him get away with it after treating me like trash. "Let us move forward," I said. That night alone at the hotel, I thought about calling my mother. She deserved to know what was happening, but she was still fragile in health, and I did not want to worry her. Instead, I wrote a letter I would never send telling everything. About Richard, about the divorce, about Dad's money, about the legal fight. Writing helped organize my thoughts to process everything that was happening. When I finished, it was 3 in the morning. I folded the letter and put it in the suitcase. The process continued. Hearings, presentation of documents, expert opinions. Richard tried to argue that the assets were protected by holdings and companies that were not part of the marital wealth. But Linda was relentless, proving the companies were just facades, that the money came from work during the marriage. In one of the hearings, I saw Richard personally for the first time since I left home. He was impeccable as always, expensive suit and confident posture. But when our eyes met, I saw something different. Uncertainty, anger, fear. Vanessa was with him, but stayed outside the room. Through the window, I saw her on her phone, bored, probably posting some photo for Instagram. During the recess, Richard's lawyer approached Linda. My client is willing to increase the offer, $100,000 cash. Linda did not even consult me. My client is not interested in deals. We will see you at the next hearing. The lawyer's face tensed up. He went back and whispered something to Richard, who looked at me with pure hate. I left the courthouse with Linda. Why didn't you accept to even negotiate? I asked. Because they are afraid. When they are afraid, it is because we know too much. The more we press, the better the final result will be. And she was right. A week later, a new proposal. $200,000. We rejected. $300,000. We rejected. With every rejection, I saw Richard getting more desperate through the messages he insisted on sending from different numbers. You are being greedy. Those lawyers are manipulating you. You are going to destroy me out of pure revenge. Revenge. Maybe it was that, but it was also justice. And mostly it was recovering what was mine by right. The twist came from where I least expected it. It was Vanessa who started to waver. Linda called me one afternoon with unexpected news. You are not going to believe it. Richard's girlfriend got in touch with my office. Vanessa. Why? She wants to talk. She says she has relevant information for the case. Information about Richard that can help us. I did not understand. Why would she do that? Is she with him? She was. Apparently things got ugly. Do you want to meet with her? She specifically asked to speak with you, not just me. I stayed silent, processing. Sarah, what do you think? It could be a trap. It could be, but it could also be useful. The decision is yours. I thought for a moment. I will meet her, but in a public place with you present. We agreed on a discreet cafe away from Richard's usual circuit. I arrived 10 minutes early, nervous. Linda was already there at a table in the back. Vanessa appeared punctually. She was different. No heavy makeup, no flashy designer clothes, simple jeans, basic blouse hair tied in a ponytail. She seemed smaller, younger, more fragile. She sat down and remained silent for a moment. Thanks for agreeing to see me, she said finally. I did not answer. I just waited. I know you hate me. You have every right. I was horrible to you. You were. She sighed. I did not know. I swear I did not know the truth about you two. The truth? I could not avoid the sarcastic tone. The truth is you were sleeping with a married man. I know. But he told me you guys were separated for months, that you knew about him and everything was fine, that it was just a matter of time for the divorce to come out. And you believed him? She blushed. I wanted to believe him. He was so convincing, so charming. He made me feel special. Her hands shook around the coffee cup. But after you left, things changed. Linda leaned forward. How so? He started controlling everything. My cell phone, my social media, my outings. He said it was because he loved me because he was jealous. At first I found it cute. She laughed without humor. How stupid was I? Why are you telling us this now? I asked. Vanessa took a deep breath. Because he kicked me out. The same way he kicked you out. Last week. He simply said he did not want me anymore, that I was being too needy, too dramatic. He told me to leave with a suitcase and $50. So that was it. Richard had discarded her, too. "And you want revenge?" said Linda bluntly. "I do, but I also want to do the right thing." Vanessa looked at me. "You did not deserve what he did, and I helped him do it. I want to fix this. What kind of information do you have?" I asked. Vanessa took a USB drive from her purse. While I was there, he received work calls at home. I started paying attention, and I started recording. Linda took the USB drive as if it were gold. Recording what? Conversations of him about business. There is a project he is building in the south of the city downtown. He used cheaper material than specified in the project, and there are audios of him agreeing to bribes with an inspector to approve an inspection. Silence fell over the table. Linda paused. "This is very serious. I know. When he kicked me out, I got angry, but I also got scared. If he did this to you, to me, how many other people did he do it to? And those buildings of his. There are people living in those buildings. If he used bad material..." She was right. This went far beyond divorce and asset division. It was a crime. "Why didn't you take this to the police?" I asked. "Because I am afraid of him. He has expensive lawyers' contacts. I am nobody. But you..." She looked at me. "You are fighting him. And from what I saw in the process, you are winning. I thought this could help." Linda analyzed the USB drive. "I am going to need a technician to verify the authenticity of these audios. And you are going to need to sign a document confirming it was you who recorded it by your own hand. I will sign it, whatever is necessary." We spent another hour at the cafe while Linda asked detailed questions. Vanessa told about secret accounts Richard mentioned about meetings with businessmen that seemed suspicious, about cash payments he received that never went into the official accounts. When we finished, Vanessa stood up to leave. She stopped and looked at me. "I know this does not erase what I did. I do not expect your forgiveness. But I hope this helps. Why are you really doing this?" I asked. "The truth." She hesitated. "Because when he kicked me out, I understood what you must have felt. And no one deserves that. No one." She left. I stayed looking out the window as she disappeared into the crowd. "What do you think?" I asked Linda. "I think we just received heavy ammunition. If these audios are authentic, Richard has much bigger problems than the divorce." She was right. 2 days later, the technician confirmed the audios were true, no edits or manipulations. The conversations were clear. Richard agreeing to use cheaper material and pocket the difference. Richard offering money to an inspector to approve a work that was not up to code. "What do we do with this?" I asked. Linda stayed silent for a moment. "We have 2 options. We use it as leverage in the divorce to force a better agreement, or we hand it to the authorities and let justice take its course. What do you recommend?" Personally, both. First, we use it as leverage. When we get our agreement, then we hand it to the police. That way you are financially protected and he still answers for the crimes. It seemed calculating, cold, but it also seemed right. Let us do it. Linda scheduled a meeting with Richard's lawyers, in person without revealing the reason. On the day of the meeting, we entered a conference room at a neutral hotel. Richard was there with his 2 lawyers. When he saw me, his face contorted into a mixture of anger and contempt. "Still haven't given up on this charade?" he said. "Sit down," Mr. Richard said. Linda calmly. "We have a proposal." She put a tablet on the table and pressed play. Richard's voice filled the room. "Use the cheapest cement. Nobody will know the difference. The profit margin doubles." His face turned white. Linda paused and looked at his lawyers. "We have 12 hours of audio along these lines, including bribe agreements, use of irregular material, and discussions about tax evasion, all duly authenticated by an expert." One of Richard's lawyers stood up. "This is inadmissible as evidence. It was obtained illegally. It was obtained by a third person who was present in the conversations, perfectly legal, and even if it were not used in the divorce process, nothing prevents it from being handed over to the district attorney. Richard exploded. "Is this blackmail?" "No," answered Linda calmly. "It is negotiation. You have two options. First, we close a fair division agreement today. You transfer half the marital wealth as determined by law, and we all go on with our lives. Second, no deal. We hand this material to the police today, and you answer for several crimes while still fighting in court for the division." Silence. Richard's lawyers looked at each other. One of them asked for a moment in private with the client. We left the room. I stood nervously in the hallway. "Do you think it will work?" I asked Linda. "It will work. They have no choice." 15 minutes later, they called us back. Richard was defeated, slumped in the chair, looking at the table. One of the lawyers spoke for him. "My client agrees to make the equal division of assets, half of everything acquired during the marriage, plus a compensation of $50,000 for moral damages." Linda looked at me. I nodded. "I accept, but I want everything in writing today, and the initial transfer of the properties starting next week. We will arrange it. It took the rest of the day, but we left there with a signed agreement, notarized and registered. Richard would transfer 2 apartments, half of the shares in the companies, and $280,000 in cash paid in 6 months, totaling approximately $450,000. When we left the hotel, it was already night. Linda hugged me. "You did it. You got justice." But it did not feel like a victory. It felt lonely. The end of a chapter. "And the audios?" I asked. "Tomorrow morning I will go personally to the DA's office. Richard will have to deal with that too." I went back to the hotel, exhausted. I took a long shower and collapsed into bed. For the first time in months, I slept deeply. 2 days later, the news came out in the papers. Construction businessman from upscale neighborhood investigated for fraud and corruption. Richard's photo was on the front page, leaving the police station looking grim. My cell phone rang. It was Vanessa. "Did you see?" she asked. "I saw. Thank you for doing the right thing. You helped." There was a pause. "Are you okay?" "I am. And you?" "I went back to my parents' house. I am starting over. And you?" I looked around the hotel room that had been my home for the last few weeks. I am starting over too. With the agreement signed and the transfers starting, I needed to make practical decisions about my life. I could not stay in a hotel forever. Gerald helped me organize the finances. With the money from the settlement added to my father's inheritance, I had resources to live comfortably the rest of my life without working. But the idea of doing nothing bothered me. "What did you like to do before getting married?" asked Gerald during a meeting. I had to think. Was it that long ago? I studied architecture. I never practiced, but I always liked design, creating spaces. "So why don't you go back to doing it?" It seemed impossible. 15 years away from the profession. Everything had changed. Software trends, technologies, but the idea stayed in my head. Architecture, creating beautiful and functional things, helping people have better homes. I decided that the first thing I would design would be my own house, a place that was completely mine without bad memories, without associations with Richard. I spent weeks looking for land. I wanted something quiet but not too far from the city, a place where I could start over. I found a perfect plot in a gated community 40 minutes from downtown. Many trees, mountain view. Silence. I bought it cash. I hired an architect to help me with the technical details, but the project would be mine. I spent hours drawing, imagining every room, every detail. I wanted a house full of light, big windows, few walls, integration with the garden, an open, ventilated space where I could breathe, a large office because I was determined to go back to studying to update myself, a library because I always loved books. But Richard thought they took up too much space. A large kitchen because I had discovered I liked cooking when I did culinary therapy at the hotel, and a comfortable guest room. for my mother when she could come visit me. Construction would take 8 months. Meanwhile, I rented a small but cozy apartment in the suburbs. I bought new furniture, nothing very expensive, just enough to feel at home. It was strange at first, the loneliness. There was no one asking where I was, what I was doing when I was coming back. I was free, and freedom, I discovered, can be terrifying. I started therapy with a psychologist named Dr. Laura, specialized in women leaving abusive relationships. Yes, abusive. I took a while to accept that term, but it was the truth. Richard had controlled me subtly for years, financially, emotionally, and socially. You are going to need to relearn who you are, said Dr. Laura in the first session, because you probably spent so much time being who he wanted you to be that you forgot who Sarah really is. And she was right. Simple things confused me. What kind of music did I like? What food did I prefer? How did I like to spend my free time? I started experimenting. I went to art exhibitions alone. I watched movies Richard hated. I ate at restaurants he found too simple. I bought clothes he would say did not fit me well. And little by little, I was rediscovering myself. I discovered that I liked getting up early and walking in the park, that I loved jazz, but I had never listened to it because Richard only listened to electronic music that I felt good in jeans and sneakers without needing to always be dressed up. I also decided to tell my mother everything. I traveled to Ohio and spent a weekend with her. She was already better from the stroke stronger. When I told her about the divorce, about Richard kicking me out about Dad's money, she cried. I knew something was wrong, she said. Your father always distrusted Richard. He said he had cold eyes, but you seemed happy, so we did not want to interfere. I thought I was happy, or I had convinced myself of that. She held my hand. Your father was very wise. He knew that one day you might need that security. We sat in silence for a moment. He would do that for you too if he could, I said. I know he was a good man. Before returning, I visited my father's grave. I brought flowers and stayed there for a while. Thank you, Dad, I whispered. You saved me even after leaving, and I promise to use this the right way, the way you would like. Months passed. The house was taking shape. I visited the site every week, following every stage. It was exciting seeing something that had been born in my head becoming real. I started an online architecture update course. It was challenging but good. My brain was rusty, but little by little, I got back into the rhythm. During that time, Richard disappeared from my life completely. I knew from news that he was facing several lawsuits from the construction company, from clients who had discovered the frauds from the DA's office. Vanessa also disappeared from social media. I hope she was okay rebuilding her life far from all that. One afternoon, I received a call from Linda. Sarah, we managed to finalize all the transfers. The 2 apartments are in your name. The shares were transferred and the last payment landed in the account. Officially, your divorce is complete. Complete. 15 years of marriage summarized in bank transfers and paperwork, but I did not feel sadness. I felt relief. That night, I made a list of everything that had happened in the last year, from the broken woman on the sidewalk to where I was now. Owner of properties with money in the bank, building her own house, going back to school. It was not the life I had planned. It was much better. 6 months after the agreement, I received the call I was waiting for. Sarah, the house is ready, said the architect. You can move in whenever you want. I went there the same day. I entered through the front door and stood in the hall just feeling. It was perfect, exactly as I had imagined. Light entering from everywhere. Spacious but cozy spaces. Every detail thought out with care. My house, my space, my new beginning. I moved in little by little without rushing. Every piece of furniture chosen with care, every object with meaning. No ostentation, nothing to impress anyone. Just what made me happy. The day I hung the last painting on the living room wall, I sat on the sofa and looked around. I was home. Finally. A year after being kicked out of the house, my life was unrecognizable. The house turned out beautiful with a garden. I took care of myself. I discovered I liked gardening. something therapeutic about caring for plants, watching them grow. I finished the architecture update course and started doing small freelance jobs. Nothing big, just remodeling projects for acquaintances. But it was rewarding using my creativity, again creating spaces that made people happy. Gerald suggested I do something more with my financial situation. You have resources. Why don't you invest in something that makes a difference? The idea stayed in my head. Difference how? It was during a therapy session that I had the idea. How many women are in the situation you were in? Asked Dr. Laura. Trapped in bad relationships because they have no financial independence. Without professional qualification because they gave up everything for the marriage. Without a support network because they isolated themselves. Many. The answer was many. What if I could help? I thought out loud. What if I created something for women in that situation? The idea grew. I talked to Gerald, to Linda, to other professionals, and little by little the project took shape. I created an NGO called New Dawn. The goal was to help women leaving abusive or difficult relationships to rebuild their lives. We offered free legal accompaniment through a partnership with Linda's firm, professional training courses, financial guidance so they learned to handle money, and psychological support because I knew firsthand how important that was. I rented a small space downtown, nothing fancy but functional. I hired a small team, a social worker, a psychologist, and an administrative coordinator. The project started small. In the first weeks, we helped only 3 women, but word of mouth worked. In 2 months, we had a waiting list. The stories were similar to mine. Women who had been convinced to leave careers to depend completely on their husbands to annul themselves. Women who were now trying to rebuild from scratch. One of them was especially impactful. Carmen, 38 years old, 2 children. The husband had controlled every penny that entered the house for 15 years. When she tried to separate, he threatened to leave her with nothing. Linda took the case. In 4 months, we managed not only a fair division, but also child support and a restraining order against the ex-husband who had shown himself violent. Carmen took an administration course we offered, got a job in a small company, and was rebuilding her life. "You saved me," she told me one day with tears in her eyes. "No," I answered. "You saved yourself. I just gave you the tools." The work at the NGO filled me in a way I never imagined. Every woman we helped was a victory. Every story of overcoming reminded me why it was worth it. I also went back to having a social life. I made friends with other women from the NGO volunteer group. We went out to dinner, laughed, talked about everything and nothing. One of them, Julia, became especially close. She had gone through a difficult divorce years ago and was now a lawyer specialized in family law. "You know you are an inspiration to many women, right?" She told me one night while we drank wine on my terrace. I was surprised. I did not do anything extraordinary. "Sarah, you came out of the bottom of the well and created something beautiful. You not only rebuilt your life, but you are helping others rebuild theirs. That is incredible." I had not thought like that. For me, it was just doing what seemed right, but little by little, I realized my story had power. I started giving lectures at universities and women's groups telling my experience, not to brag, but to show it was possible to start over, no matter how lost the person felt. The lectures led to more women looking for the NGO. The project grew. We got sponsorship from some companies and donations from individuals. We expanded to 2 larger rooms and hired more professionals. One day, I received an unexpected message. It was from Vanessa. "Hi, Sarah. I know you probably do not want to talk to me, but I wanted to tell you. I am studying at university. Psychology. I want to help women who have gone through abusive relationships like me and you. Thanks for having shown that it is possible to start over," I replied. "Congratulations on university. I hope you realize your dream. And if you need an internship in the future, look me up. There is always room for those who want to help." She replied with a heart emoji, and thanks. Forgiving does not mean forgetting, but it means not letting the past control your future. 2 years after the divorce, the NGO had already helped more than 200 women. Some got fair divorces, others found jobs, others simply found the strength to leave bad situations. During that time, I avoided relationships. I was not ready. I did not want to risk it again, but I did not feel lonely. I had my mother, who now visited me frequently. I had my friends. I had my work. I had my house. One afternoon, I was at the NGO office reviewing some cases when the receptionist alerted me. "There is a man here who wants to talk to you. He says it is personal." My heart froze. Richard? After all this time? Who is it? He said he is Philip Guzman, university professor. He says he wants to talk about a project. I breathed, relieved. It was not Richard. Philip entered. A man of about 40-something, gray hair at the temples, reading glasses, kind smile, sociology professor. I discovered he was researching women in situations of economic vulnerability. I heard about your NGO's work. He said it is impressive. I would like to make a partnership. Bring my students to do volunteer work here. Learn in practice about the social issues we study in theory. We talked for almost 2 hours. Philip was passionate about his work. He spoke with enthusiasm about education and social transformation. It was contagious. I would love that partnership, I said at the end. When can we start? How about next week? I will bring a group of students to see the space. Perfect. He stood up to leave but hesitated at the door. Sarah, can I ask you a personal question? You can. Would you accept to have a coffee someday not related to work just because I would like to get to know you better? I was surprised. I did not expect that. I do not know if I am ready for that, I said honestly. He smiled without pressure. No problem. The offer remains open. If you change your mind, let me know. After he left, I stayed thinking. It had been 2 years. Would I be ready? I called Dr. Laura. What do you think? Am I ready to try again? She laughed softly. Sarah, only you can answer that. But I am going to ask you a question. Are you happy now? I am. And accepting to go out with someone, would that change that? Would you be less happy? I thought. Not necessarily. Then maybe the question is not if you are ready, but if you want to. Do you want to know that person better? Did I want to? I thought about Philip's kind smile, the way he spoke with passion about his work, the respect with which he had made the invitation. I think so. Then accept the coffee. It does not have to be anything more than a coffee. See how you feel. The following week, when Philip returned with the students, I told him yes. I accepted the coffee. We arranged for the following Saturday. The coffee with Philip was surprisingly normal. No pressure, no grand expectations. We talked about books, work life. He told me about his amicable divorce years ago, about his 2 teenage sons he saw every weekend. There were no sparks, no drama. Just a pleasant conversation between 2 people who had gone through difficult things and come out the other side. We went out other times, always without rushing, without commitment. Sometimes to the movies, sometimes a simple dinner, sometimes just a walk in the park. I took more than 6 months to introduce him to my mother. I was afraid of her reaction, afraid of making a mistake. But my mother liked him immediately. He has kind eyes, she said after he left. Not like the other one. This one is good. Philip never tried to rush me, never questioned why sometimes I showed myself distant, why I struggled to trust completely. He was simply there, patient, constant. I am in no hurry, he said one night. I am happy just being near you at your time. It was that which won me over the respect, the patience, the total absence of attempt to control. A year after our first coffee, he moved into my house. It was not a dramatic decision. He practically lived there already with half his clothes in the closet and his toothbrush in the bathroom. It would be more practical if I moved in once and for all, he suggested one morning while we drank coffee. It would be, I agreed. And so it was simple, like the best things in life. The NGO kept growing. We opened a second unit in another region of the city. We got a partnership with the state government to expand services. More than 500 women had already passed through our programs. I also created an emergency fund. for women who needed to leave home urgently but had no resources, temporary help to pay rent, food while they organized themselves, exactly what I did not have when I needed it. Sometimes when I was at the NGO office, I looked around and could not believe I had built that. From nothing, from despair, something was born that was changing lives. One afternoon, 3 years after the divorce, I received an unexpected call. It was a reporter from a national magazine. They wanted to do a report on the NGO and on my story. I hesitated. I did not like exposure, talking about myself. But Julia convinced me. Think about how many women will read it and realize they are not alone, that they can leave. That help exists. I accepted the interview. The report came out 2 months later. Cover of the magazine, From the Trash to the New Dawn, How Sarah Transformed Pain into Purpose. I found the title too dramatic, but the report was good. It told my story without sensationalism. It talked about the NGO. It included testimonies from women we had helped. What I did not expect was the repercussion. My cell phone would not stop ringing. Calls from TV shows wanting interviews. From other cities wanting to open units of the NGO, from women asking for help. And there was a specific call that surprised me. Sarah? It is me? Vanessa. We had not spoken for over a year. Hi, is everything okay? I read the report. It is beautiful, and I wanted to tell you. I graduated from psychology, and I wanted to know if the internship proposal still stands. I smiled. It does. When can you start? Next week? Perfect. Welcome to the team. Vanessa became one of the best professionals at the NGO. She understood from her own experience what those women were going through. She managed to connect with them in a unique way. One day, drinking coffee in the office kitchen, she told me, "You know, sometimes I think about the past and I feel ashamed of what I did, of how I was. You were young. You were manipulated too. I know. But even so, I helped hurt you. And you not only forgave me, but gave me a chance. People make mistakes, Vanessa. What matters is what we do after." She wiped a tear. "Thank you for everything." That night at home, Philip was cooking while I corrected some remodeling projects I had accepted. Freelance work was still something I did for pleasure, not necessity. "Are you happy?" he asked suddenly. I looked up. "What? Are you happy? With your life?" I thought about the question. I looked around my house. I thought about the NGO, the women we were helping, my friendships, my mother who was healthy and visited me regularly. I looked at Philip, who looked at me with so much affection. I answered with certainty, happier than I ever imagined possible. He smiled. I am glad to hear that. That night before sleeping, I took the letter my father had written years ago. It was already yellowed with marks of having been folded and unfolded many times. I reread his words. "Use this money with wisdom, not for revenge, but to build your own life." I looked around. I had done exactly that. I had not used the resources to destroy Richard, although he had destroyed himself alone with his crimes. I had used them to rebuild myself, to build something bigger than me, to help others. "I hope you are proud, Dad," I whispered. "I think I used the gift you gave me well." I put the letter back in the drawer and turned off the light. Tomorrow would be another day. More women to help, more stories to hear, more lives to transform. And I was ready. 5 years after that terrible day, I was kicked out of the house. My life was a testimony to the power of starting over. The NGO New Dawn now had 4 units spread across the metropolitan area. We had a team of 23 professionals, lawyers, psychologists, social workers, teachers of training courses. We'd already helped more than 1,200 women rebuild their lives. My work as an architect also flourished unexpectedly. I started specializing in affordable housing projects, working with NGOs and cooperatives to create dignified spaces for low-income people. It was rewarding using my talent for something that really mattered. I married Philip in a simple ceremony, just family and close friends. Nothing ostentatious, nothing to impress anyone. just people we loved celebrating a love that had grown slowly with respect and true collaboration. This time I maintained my financial independence, not out of distrust, but out of wisdom. I had separate accounts, my investments in my name, and Philip not only supported this, but encouraged it. "You fought hard for your independence," he said. "I will never ask you to give it up." It was then I knew I had chosen correctly. My mother, now with stable health, moved into a little house I bought near mine. I saw her almost every day, and that cured something inside me, lost time recovered. As for Richard, I knew through third parties that he had lost practically everything. The investigations revealed a fraud network much larger than we imagined. He was convicted, served time, and today lived in a small town, working in an accounting office. His life of ostentation was over. I did not feel joy at his fall, just a sense of justice fulfilled. He had hurt many people. I was just one of them. One. Now he was paying the price. One morning, I was at the NGO office when our receptionist alerted me of an unexpected visit. "There is a woman here. She says you will want to receive her." When I saw who it was, I froze. It was Veronica, the best friend I had in college, and who I lost contact with when I married Richard. "Sarah," she said with tears in her eyes, "I saw the report about you, about everything that happened. I am so sorry. I should have stayed in touch. I should have realized." I hugged her. "It was not your fault I isolated myself. I am the one who should apologize." We talked for hours. She told me about her life, her happy marriage, her 2 children. I told about my journey, about falling and getting up, about finding purpose in pain. "You were always strong," said Veronica, "even when you did not realize it." We resumed the friendship as if 15 years had not passed. Some true connections resist time and distance. On the 5th anniversary of the NGO, we held a big event. We invited all the women we had helped over the years. More than 300 attended. Each one had a story of overcoming. Women who now had their own businesses, established careers, safe homes. Women who had escaped violent relationships and were now independent and happy. During the event, Carmen, the first woman we helped, asked to speak. 5 years ago, I was lost, aimless, without hope. I thought I could never get out of that hole. And then I met Sarah and the team at New Dawn. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. "You guys not only helped me legally and financially, you showed me that I had value, that I deserved more. Today I am an administrative manager of a company. I live in my own house, and my children are safe and happy. None of this would be possible without you." When she finished, the whole room applauded standing. I cried, not of sadness, but of gratification. That night, at home with Philip, we sat on the terrace with wine and stayed in silence for a while, just looking at the stars. "You saved many lives," he said. "I did not save anyone, I just gave tools. They saved themselves. Even so, you transformed your pain into something beautiful. Not just anyone achieves that." I thought about his words. It was true. I could have become bitter. I could have become cynical. I could have used my resources just to take revenge on Richard. Instead, I chose to build. I chose to help. I chose to transform the trash into a garden. "Do you know what I learned from all this?" I said out loud. "That it is not what happens to us that defines who we are. It is what we do with what happens." Philip held my hand. "And you chose to do something incredible." Days later, I was reorganizing my home office when I found that old suitcase, the same one I carried the day I was kicked out. It was stored in the back of a closet, forgotten. I opened it carefully. Inside the old clothes I wore that day, the envelope with the fraudulent divorce and my father's faded blue card. I took the card and ran my finger over the worn surface. That small piece of plastic had changed everything. Not for the money it represented, but for the love it carried, for the care of a father who wanted to protect his daughter, even after death. I decided to keep the card in a special way. I framed it together with my father's letter and put it on my office wall. A daily reminder of where I came from, what I overcame, and the love that brought me here. Looking at the frame, I thought of all the Sarahs I had been. The naive girl who married for love, the wife who annulled herself little by little, the destroyed woman on the sidewalk, the survivor who got up, the social entrepreneur, the happy and fulfilled woman I was today. All those Sarahs were part of me, and all of them in some way were necessary for me to get here. My cell phone rang. It was Vanessa from the office. "Sarah, a woman just arrived. Story very similar to yours. Her husband kicked her out of the house yesterday. She's desperate. Can you come talk to her? I am on my way." I took my keys and left. One more woman needing help. One more story of pain that could transform into a new dawn. And I would be there to help, because I knew better than anyone that sometimes all a person needs is an extended hand in the darkest moment. And sometimes that extended hand comes from someone who was also in the dark and found the light. I drove to the office with a full heart. My life was not perfect, but it was mine, built by me with my choices, my values, my purpose. When Richard threw me on the street believing he was destroying me, he actually freed me. He forced me to discover my own strength. He gave me the opportunity to become who I really was, not who he wanted me to be. And for that, in a strange way, I even thanked him. Because from the bottom of the well, I not only climbed up, I flew. Now, if you liked this story, click subscribe and tell me in the comments which part left you with your mouth open. Oh, and do not forget to become a member to have access to exclusive videos that I do not publish here. I will wait for you.